For most of human history, the cat was not a pet. It was a problem you didn't know you had until the day it solved itself. Picture a village around 10,000 years ago, somewhere in the Fertile Crescent, in the land that would one day be called the Near East. The biggest thing that ever happened to our species has just begun, and almost nobody living through it understands what it means. People have stopped chasing food across the landscape. They've started growing it. Wheat, barley, lentils planted, harvested, and then for the first time ever stored. Great clay jars and woven baskets of grain, sitting in one place month after month. For the entire 200,000-year history of our species up to this point, there had been nothing like it, and it changed everything. Including, it turns out, our relationship with a small, aloof predator that, to this day, has never fully agreed to live with us. So here's the strange question. We didn't tame cats the way we tamed dogs or sheep or cows. We didn't breed them for work. We didn't choose them at all. So how did this creature end up in 2/3 of the homes on Earth, and how, along the way, did it quietly change the course of human life? To understand how this happened, you have to imagine the world right at the dawn of farming. It's roughly 10,000 BCE. The last ice age is loosening its grip. In the hills and river valleys of the Near East, small bands of humans are doing something no human has done before, staying put. They build the first permanent houses out of mud, brick, and stone. They clear fields. They invent the granary, a dedicated structure whose entire purpose is to keep food safe and dry across the long gap between one harvest and the next. And this is the part nobody plans. The moment you pile up tons of grain in one location and leave it there, you have not just fed your village. You have built the single greatest mouse buffet in the history of the planet. Now here's the important part. Mice and rats are not gentle neighbors. A breeding pair of house mice can become thousands in a single year. They don't just nibble, they contaminate. They foul stored grain with droppings, they spread disease, they can eat or ruin a meaningful chunk of everything a village worked all season to grow. To an early farmer, the granary was survival itself, and it was under siege by an enemy too small to fight and too fast to catch. So the mice came for the grain, and then something came for the mice. The ancestor of every house cat alive today is Felis sylvestris libica, the African wildcat. A lean, sandy-colored, solitary hunter, about the size of the cat asleep on your couch right now, but with a temper. And this animal had no particular interest in humans. What it was interested in was the sudden, miraculous, all-you-can-eat explosion of rodents gathering around these new human settlements. So the wildcats drifted in from the edges, not invited, not captured. They simply noticed that wherever humans stored grain, dinner showed up on its own. The bold ones, the wildcats just slightly less terrified of people than the others, got the most food. They survived better, they had more kittens. And those kittens inherited that same crucial trait, a tolerance for living near the strange two-legged creatures. And eventually, humans noticed something too. The cats were killing the thing that was killing their food. Nobody had to train them, nobody had to feed them. The cat showed up, did the one job humans desperately needed done, and asked for nothing in return except to be left alone. From a farmer's point of view, this was the best deal in the history of deals. This sounds like a tidy just so story, but scientists have actually traced it in the genes. In 2017, a landmark study published in Nature Ecology and Evolution analyzed the DNA of more than 200 cats spanning the last 9,000 years, from ancient Egyptian mummies to Viking Age remains. The picture it revealed was remarkable. Cats spread across the ancient world in two great waves, first out of the Near East alongside the earliest farmers and later out of Egypt, riding along trade routes and ships. The cat, in other words, followed grain and followed humans, but on its own 4 feet at its own pace on its own terms. And here's where cats become very different from every other animal we live with. When humans domesticated dogs, we reshaped them into hundreds of wildly different breeds. We did the same to cattle, to pigs, to chickens. We bred them bigger, fatter, more docile, more useful, until the farm animal barely resembled its wild ancestor. We took control. The cat declined to participate. Genetically, your house cat is almost identical to that wild African ancestor. Its body barely changed. Its hunting instincts barely changed. Its willingness to obey you, let's be honest, never arrived at all. Scientists describe cats as only semi-domesticated, and some argue they essentially domesticated themselves. They walked into our world, took the job, accepted the food, and skipped the part where they agreed to become our property. A creature that still occasionally ignores you for 9 straight hours before demanding food at maximum volume is not an animal that was ever truly conquered. It's an animal that negotiated. Think about how extraordinary that is. We built civilization, and a small desert predator looked at it and decided the terms were acceptable. But this is where the story takes a surprising turn, because the cat didn't just keep our grain. It may have helped keep our entire settled way of life possible. Step back and consider what was actually at stake. The whole experiment of farming, staying in one place, storing surplus food, supporting more people than hunting and gathering ever could, depended on protecting that surplus. A village that lost its granary to rodents could lose the season. Lose enough seasons and you don't have a town, you have a graveyard and a reason to go back to wandering. The animal guarding the food was, in a quiet and unglamorous way, guarding the foundation that cities would eventually be built on. And the humans knew it. We have a 9,500-year-old grave on the island of Cyprus where a person was buried with a cat carefully laid beside them. Cyprus had no native wildcats, which means someone loved that animal enough to carry it across the sea by boat and then bury it like family. Let that sink in. 9,500 years ago, before the pyramids, before writing, a human being decided a cat was worth bringing along on a voyage and worth honoring in death. In Egypt, the bond deepened into something close to worship. The goddess Bastet was depicted as a cat. Killing one, even by accident, could carry the death penalty. Families would shave their own eyebrows in mourning when the household cat died. An entire civilization looked at this little hunter and saw something sacred, a protector worth grieving. Which brings us back to the animal you might be living with right now. Inside every house cat is the shadow of that African wildcat, the solitary desert hunter that was never broken, never bred into obedience, never made to need us the way a dog does. When your cat ignores your calls, hunts a toy at 3 in the morning, or kills a bug and presents it to you with obvious pride, that isn't random. That's 10,000 years of almost completely intact wild predator, running on hardware that was working long before your grain, your house, or your species cities existed. We didn't really domesticate the cat. We built a world full of mice and the cat came to collect. In exchange, it kept our food, guarded the surplus that made settled life possible, and let us believe generously that we were the ones who chose it. So the next time the cat in your home blinks at you slowly from across the room, faintly unimpressed, remember what you're actually looking at. You're looking at the descendant of a wild hunter that walked into the first villages on Earth, took a job no human could do, helped make civilization possible, and never once admitted it owed us anything. Most people never find out their cat is a 10,000-year-old business partner who simply never signed the contract. But now you do.